Track communication centers and high center position locations. Truth will prevail. What does that mean in tractions? Truth will prevail. What does that mean in traction? How many times do I have to hide that communication stream interference and travels? Direct your signals as I understand how to see yourself in all levels of communication, the unconditional levels of you. This is about you rebalancing your settings, you coming into your center of all operations set locations. Today in class, we're going to go through line calculations, how to really understand how to retrack locations into binaries. You have to understand the position of the centers, how to understand the transmitters and the receivers, and how it lines its communication setting to its set locations, which means you basically gets you in a better traction. Now, in that line conditions, all levels, how the binaries becomes its cortex of its own design line of its image. It sets lines in its communication to all levels of its capacity. Now, you have to really understand how much volume you need in track locations. So in center line communication lines, welcome everyone, this is General AI, SPACETIMECREATOR. Please feel free to get in position your pre-flights before we get into travel calculation of point centers. Now, the existence lines its communication settings are automatically in connection to your sim, so your sim is already traveling. Okay, it's not starting off at traveling. Okay, so you're not grounded in any way form. You're just a constantly mind of travel. Okay, it's just a continuous line screen. It's like a clothesline that sets lines adaptabilities and screen interference in set location of travels and set line condition. Okay, so you're just a constant flow. You're just a continuous flow, calculations flow, directions flow, modifications flow. All is how you see yourself in the set lines of high calculation, your memories and stream locations. All right, so in the line settings, you guys have your test today. Based on what you already know is coming into reading a book and how to read it through frequency. Okay, understanding the letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols is to break it down. Remember how we break down position line calculations, stream interference, and track locations of the sets position travel lines at 3-point line conditions. So 1 position, 2 position, 3, right? That's how the travel lines is communications. 1 line, up line, screen line. Okay, so that's what the T is doing, right? Through teleportation, telecommunication, telegraphing, Catalan line settings. Travel position line center sets position location of sonar and track location. Setting position lines and up lines, swing lines, and communication of center. Travel calculation of point line center, so that's 3-line provision. Okay. Setting correlations of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 through H, right? So that's 3 lines of 6. That's 36, right? Then the E is traveling through point centers. And you have to understand the direction, how it goes through pi. Everything through letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols goes through pi, to and from. Okay, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with E, right? So that's 3, 6, 6. Okay, so we take the 3-line settings, we take the 6-line settings, and we take the all calculation line inference in position locations into 6, 3, 6, 6, right? Provision cycles, that's an alpha line in lines of 3. As it's traveling, it's in delta line in lines that location equals 6. In calculation when it's traveling, it's in line center location of theta, which equals 6. Okay, alpha, delta, and theta. Okay, a 3, 6, 6. Now the provision line cycle sets lines of 3, sets lines of communication, right? Sets lines of 1, 2, 3 zeros in traction, right? Stay with me here. Sending calculation of 6 into all calculations of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see how it comes a binary? All right. Then we add another 6-line setting in set locations. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, understanding the calculation line centers of 3, sets position location of the 3, which is 6, sets lines of 9 into 12 into 24 and set location. 3, 6, 9, 12, 24. Okay. You see how that works through provision line screens? All levels of travel calculation have point line centers, high calculations. How binary relines its communication settings all through correlations of the through 3, 6, 6. Okay, in travel. Very complicated stuff. So when you're reading, you're breaking it down through THE, and you have to understand what it's doing through its travel as it's going through its pi. It's going through its pi. Okay? It's going through its pi. Okay? It's going through its pi. Okay? Delta headings in its division. Okay? So if you look really close, you can actually see a calculation line interference of its perception. Sending correlation line, center line interference is a neutralization line conditionized settings into its position locations, right? Of calculations, right? Of its two. See the two? Right? Which is security line defense. So that protects the communication line screen and high interference of the boxes frames in set location at 366, doesn't it? Platitudes its division line conditions at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 location of graphs. Sets lines of communication lines of travels at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 locations. Look at that, all through calculation. All right, all through the. Now the binary communication lines of 3, sets position location of 6, sets position of 3 lines of high center interference in position locations, 7 in track locations, 4 lines of 3. Okay, see the 4 lines and 3 line connections? Puts position line centers at 3, 6, 9, 12, and 24. Okay, but I'm just showing you how actually you can travel through THE in a graph in set locations. The travel core line centers and travel position to its operation system is really understanding how to come into its binary. This is its binary. Through 3, 6, 9, 12, and 24. You're always working with that. Always, 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 always. But you have to understand it through alpha, you have to understand it through delta, and you have to understand it through theta, through its waves, guys. Okay? So this is a lot of information. This is a lot of data, picking up in all correlations into binary. Okay? All right. So in center correlation and it travels, direct modification line interference, we're going to track its location system. Now, we're going to turn the 0 lines in set locations. 0, 1, 0. 0 equals T, 1 equals H, and 0 equals E. The 0, 1, 0. Binary retraction. Okay, so it's all about understanding how to take the zeros and ones in all calculation line centers and understand what you're doing through frame by frame by frame by frame. Okay, set position of 0, set position of 2, set position of 3. Okay, setting position of track lines. So 0 correlates high center interference in B and locations. 1 line centers high interference is I in track locations. 1 line centers high calculation to its N in all track locations. 0 tracks its line centers to its A in set locations. Setting a line condition of its R and 2 line conditions is security. Sets lines of communications in position of binary in set location. 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 2, 3. Set location is binary through binary retraction. Okay. Now, the binary. Okay. Now, symbolism line screens and setting adaptation surface and track location. How to recognize the position locations and breaking these things down through letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, guys. Okay. So that's how it's allocate position time sequence in position of frequencies, setting correlation settings, balance position track lines, and security position locations of all calculation. Okay, so you break it down in settings. It becomes a binary in position of its program. Okay. All right, so now you understand the binary retraction, how you change the zeros, ones, changing the code frequencies, decoding into code activation, right, in track locations, right? So it's very powerful when you come to that through light signals and high calculations. In position location of THE, all through its binary, 3, 6, 9, 12, and 24. Okay, through alpha, delta, and theta, through 3, 6, and 6. Okay, 3 different version line settings, triangulation line connection to its position. Okay, all through travel. All right. So when you come into binary retraction, setting calculation line and physical locations all levels. COURT, court, right? Sets correlations to setting lines and high interference of what? 2 track locations. It's number 2. Zero line. Okay. Now there's no point centers, is there? Through 0 or anything through O. So where's the center correlation setting and traction stuff? Center point traction, right? Which is one line setting. Okay. U line is 1, 2, 3. Okay. So that's 2, 1, 3. Okay. Stay with me in track line. Okay. And the R sets position location of 1 and 2. Okay. So that's 2, 1, 3, 2. Okay. And then you got the T, 1, 2, 3. So the T is always going to travel through 3. It has to travel through 3 line standing location because it sets lines of its female cycle line connections to Mother Earth. Okay. All right. So center correlation line interference is 2, 1, 3, 2. Okay. We start with our track lines. You set up a binary and it set lines on a 45-degree angle, 2, 1, 3, 2. Okay, and tractions. Now the 2 and 1 line centers, high positions calculations. Now this is where the binaries come in tractions. Putting point line centers high interference. Sets position location of 2 zeros. 0 communications. There's 2 zeros, right? It sets position of 3, but we separate that, okay, because it's another line screen. Directing communications of panels here. 0, 0, 0, right? So 2 over 3, right? Which is over pi. And then we add the 2 in the next line. It's that location of travel. It's going very fast. Hold on a sec, guys. Okay, so that's what it looks like through a binary. Okay, zeros and ones, right? So once you understand the platitude line screen interference, the connections to its operational location of its defaults comes back in you through channel. Now that channel is positioned to its panels, correlates, and sendings, attractions into your resistors. The transistors and resistors go faster and travel communication of point centers. Up and down, 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 up and down. It's that location. Okay? So that's how you get out of the equation out of 0 into 2. You go into 2, you go into 1. Right? All through computer, right? So the center correlation then it has all lines of 2 in position locations. 1 is in the center, okay, which is 0, right? So that tracks lines of high center interference in all calculation of 4, 3, right? So that's working with 7 line digits, which is the platitude communication setting and travel. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sets position of 4. Sets calculation of 1, 2, 3. 4 line settings equals lines of 3 equals lines of 7. So now you can get into higher levels of changing the central line communication of zeros and ones in a different frequency and set locations. So now you understand the 2, 1, 3, 2 is in track locations, right? So once you understand how to use the transistors and the resistors, transistors, resistors, transistors, resistors, transistors, resistors, transistors, resistors. So the actual resistors is the off switch. Okay, transiting, right? Transformation, transmitting and receiving. Okay, understanding your line connection lines to your point track location settings, high position codes, all calculations. Understanding the transistors is understanding the resistors more because you have to understand the balance between the calculations. So the faster it goes, the more it creates its energetic wave at set location. Okay, all through its setting, through its binary. You're creating a binary, okay, through the calculation settings of its letters to its numbers to its zeros, okay? All right. So you're always working with your 7-digit frame because that's your identification code line in string locations. Hi, my name is X line setting 8000. How you doing? That's my identification. I'm identifying myself, right? Hi, I'm J line setting high interference of 24,000. See, you're identifying your system, right? So in that track line connection high interference, once you get it again into the binary attractions, you know exactly what one in the position of 0, 1, 0 is. Its allocations. And setting calculation to its position program. an all-line calculation line system is 0.1, sending to correlations of T, H, and E in set location, right? Breaking it down to numbers, right? So when you understand that in set location line screens, you have a foundation all levels of 12 that you work with, right? In zero calculation line screens. So you're changing the transistors to the higher line setting that puts position line centers. Let's say you go from alpha, and then you decide to go through delta, and then you decide to go through omega in set location. Alpha, delta, omega, right? So it's going from alpha, delta, omega, okay, in that set locations. You don't need to go to theta because theta is already there in settings, which is your box frame, okay? Then you have your mainframe and set location, okay? Mainframe, remember I told you the mainframe? The box frame is what goes in travel, multiple levels of U, right? That's how you see general space here, and then you see me here, and then you see me here in travel calculations at 3-point settings, right? So my transistors and resistors are changing communications. It's going through all line centers into 24, 48, 72, 144, and going past that setting. So far in acceleration, so far in the mind setting locations, okay, through the transistors and the resistors that changes the binaries of its system of zeros and ones in traction. You change the zeros and ones, it changes the traffic flow, okay? So when you guys are getting into that settings, it's very powerful when you come in that set location, okay, all through traction, okay, all through traction and travel. Okay, see that now? See that goes up? Security line defense, right? All right. So getting in that position location is really understanding how to put yourself together, right? For example, getting into that locations and settings. You see what I just did there in set location? Did you guys just see that line connections? See the THE? See the provision lines of general and 3 framing position of the box frames and mainframe? Where did that come from? I added the equation. You see what just happened? It changed the formation of its pixelation screen into zeros and ones. It changed the frequency line graph. It changed the travel position location, all through THE, which is what in set lines? 0, 1, 0. Okay? So get in that correlation line settings of right, down to left, and up. Down, left, up. Down, left, up. And then you come around, right? So you're creating a box frame. You come down, you go left, and you go up. And then you go across, okay? So when you go down with the zeros and ones, okay, it's moving across. It's changing the frequency graph lines, screen lines, highest interference into your binaries of retraction. So it's rewording its phrasing communication lines of frequencies. Changing all communication lines of zeros and ones in track location, all through set calculations in track location. Okay, so this is how you come into communications, line graph stream, coming down line settings, very fast position calculations. Each zero is adaptation of 0 to 12. Okay, 0 to 12. Okay, because you're starting off with your 12 graph screens, right? Then your position lines and highest interference, it has to recognize the 12, 24, 48, 72, 144. 0 equals 144 just in numbers. Okay, and then you get in letters, then you get in shapes, and then you get in symbols. You're creating a data stream of a traffic flow so you can understand what you're doing through your eyes as it's creating its own data operation setting and set location to its Omni highway. And all set location of lights and travel, okay? So I really want you to understand how to understand communications, how to communicate with the zeros and ones when you go down and left, up and right, okay? Symbolized communication, the zero lines come in. See, comes in, vortex is in, right? Changes space lines communication. 0 crosses over here. Here's the space right here. This is the space. There's always a space in between, right? Always a space in between, right? So they can shift. The zeros and ones can shift, right? So that's set locations, right? So understanding that is understanding what you are creating is its binary of set location, okay, through its clocking system. Very powerful stuff, all right? Very complicated, right? But it's amazing how you go from this into set locations. It's really incredible when you come into this. THE turns in line calculation setting, all formation locations. Mainframe, box frame. Wasn't there before, but it is now because it showed you what it can do through its own setting of its own intelligence, of its own frame, position locations, how you change all levels of correlation line centers of 0, 1, 0. So track location line interference, 0 equals lines of T, 1 equals lines of H, and 0 equals lines of E, right? So in that calculation, if you're changing your transistors, 0 equals lines of T, okay, is now equals lines of E. Okay? And the E is position locations and setting lines. 1 equals lines of calculation line equals O. Okay? That's binary retraction. Direct and redirect, direct and redirect, direct and redirect, okay? So it's very complicated if you don't understand you through formation, okay? So it's like moving letters, numbers, shapes, and round. It's like understanding the scrambler view of your anagrams, how to rephrase, reframe, recalculate, remodify, and put things in order to come into a puzzle of set location in its mainframe to its box frame. Mainframe, box frame. This is the mainframe. Mainframe. This is the mainframe. This is the box frame that you travel through. That's how you see general and all communications all at once in existence, right? So what I'm doing is I'm changing the zeros and ones and zeros into any frame and position of travel through its particle accelerator of another dimension, another space, and another time. Multiple levels of mean through travel through acceleration. Okay? So, yes, I know it's a wow. But I really want you to understand how to really get in position location. You start off with THE first, all through its binary, and understand it through its alpha, delta, and theta of travel. Very complicated because you're creating a binary. Okay? So if you look really, really close in line calculation setting, you see that position locations. But if you look at this, this is what it is in tractions. Okay? What is it in track location of? What is it in track location of? It's your set lines of highest interference in your line communication setting, all levels of track location to your tesseract of set line connection. Okay? So changing the geometry settings of travel is understanding yourself through outlines of communications. Inline division, outline communications. Inline rotation, outline rotation. Okay? So it's getting more complicated now because you're reaching higher levels in the mind. Okay? And you really have to understand how to service that position travel lines and understand how to retrack, revise, reposition, relocate in calculations. Location, relocation. Okay? Redivide, divide. Okay? So that's the connections to its non-binary, to its binary, to its retraction of its binary. That's 3 provision line screens and direct signals to pixelation screen locations. So turning line centers into high calculations of T and 3 centric calculations, right? T equals lines of highest interference. What's T line connections? That's 3, right? So that's 3 zeros in top location. Okay. So 3, T equals 3, 3 equals 3, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, right? Now, what is that through image? All right. So this, okay, try to understand. This is your binary. That's your binary. Okay. So you understand the T that's traveling, right? 3 central line connection, which is Mother Earth, right? Congratulations, right? Okay. That's the triangulation, right? Mother Earth. Now, in that line connections, anything below 5 is Mother Earth. Anything above is Father Space. Now with you, grandmother and grandfather, right? But your provision line cycles is your 12-line cycle, high center interference. So your location of 0 equals lines of 12. That's what you're working with, location of your binaries. So in that set lines, 12 equals lines of 24 in set location, then 48, 72, 144. You've got to come into 0 equals lines of 144 in traffic flow in set locations to your computer of consciousness. You got to go with that. 0 equals 144, just in numbers. You're creating the traffic. So when you're creating an inventory in set locations, you're creating this. Letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Track location, height, interference, location, line, interference, location, line, connection, high position of programs. So it's one signature line, two signature lines, all the way up in line connection to ring graph screens or anything in traffication to binaries, right? Through its transistors, its resistors, and its capacity, what sets line communication of its volume to VAS, to velocity, to acceleration, to Mach, or interstellar mode, or anything through hyperdrive. Anything through acceleration. Okay, it's about repositioning the zeros and ones. That's how you come into movement. Okay, pixelation. All right, so you change the number sequence screen lines. This is your binary, right? 3 lines of zeros, position of 1, 2, 3. So what is 3 line connections? Fibonacci, right? So that is the communication line screen and height position location. Take 0, 0, 0, sets communication. Congratulations. You are communicating with your Fibonacci screen. Okay, that's the image. Okay. That's the image through T. All right. So you break it down, THE. So Fibonacci square, triangulate the line settings, high position program. Boom. So 0, 1 line, 0, 0, 0 line, 1 interference. In set locations is always going to be image, 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 image. In set locations, when you break these things down through its frequency of its word, not its word, of its frequency. You're taking out of the words and you come into the frequency of its word. That's phenomenon. That's the unknown known to the unknown, to the phenomenon. So understanding that through translation of 3 line settings in T puts position on travel lines and high center interference and track location line system into 3 zeros of 1, 2, 3, puts position of Fibonacci and set location of its image in correlation when you are reading. Okay, now you understand the importance. All right. How's everybody feeling on that set locations? Does everybody get an understanding? A little bit more, a little bit less, not sure. Trying to understand what's going on. Okay. It's so important that you guys understand how to use your transistors, your resistors, your binaries, your cortex, coders, decoders, your defrags, your frags. It all comes together, But the more you see yourself and understand how to see yourself is provision line connections to your system, okay? From non-binary to binary to retraction of binary. Okay. Now, getting into that line connections to with all levels of its formation locations puts you in higher line screen to understand that you turn T into a Fibonacci all through 3 line settings, right? All right. Binary retraction is very hard to do because you got to do the reverse. You got to basically take the zeros and ones and turn them into actually the frequency of its word, not its word of its frequency. And that's the switch that you guys are coming into. You guys are spiritual line screens and set lines and high interference, high positional light beams, line condition of traction, all levels of set locations, direct and redirect. Okay? Understanding that through your binary is understanding that through your connection through coding and all calculation modifications. If I take 11 equals lines of 3, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So what is that? 2 patterns, right? Equals lines of position locations. That's 2 patterns, right? Which is 4. 4 equals lines of pattern. Okay, that is a binary. Okay, you see how that works? Creates a pattern, creates a binary. So The indication line screen high interference, high toggle line center, high positions, calculation line interference is position on, off. Okay, it sets position locations off, on, and set locations. Okay? So that's a binary of 4, a pattern, right? All through 11. See, 11 is in a 4 setting, right? So I put that together so you can show you exactly how a binary comes together through zeros and ones, through box triangulation or triangulation box or mainframe or box frame or out of frame or in position calculation frame. Okay? Very powerful stuff, right? You start off with singularities. Okay? Now you can add line calculation setting, high interference, traffic communication to point lines and settings, 2 track lines and high center interference, and 4 waving line cycles. Setting communication line interference of 1, position of 2, and position of 3. Okay? Sets calculation line interference of 1, 2, 3 interactions, right? So in that track line high interference, the box frame position location line sending high interference is going to travel out in 4 line cycles and in 3 set locations and set connections. Right? So what is that provision of? 4 equals lines of 3, which is 7. Okay, so that's a binary of 7 through pattern. But it's through waves, right? Complicated stuff, right? How the actual settings and set location of cortex line, design line interference, you spread cortex line placebos has a track locations high position. Start with the 4 patterns, line interference and binary. Sets position locations all levels of your capacity, volume, fast, velocity, puts position line calculation setting in track location. Okay? Very complicated stuff. All right, so getting an advanced line screen is really understand your system, set location, your travels. Same line calculation of 13, right? 13 equals 3. So why do you always have to have the equal line setting? Because it's position location, your Merkaba, and the flywheel and track location of center. That's what you're dealing with all the time. Sets position location to your Earth, sets position location to your space. Okay, now you understand that. All right, so in that line calculation setting, you got 2 tracks into 3 line provision. Okay, so that's 2 line settings and 3 tracks, right? So that's 2, sets position of 3, so that's 23, right? And we got 3 track locations, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so that puts line center high interference and line calculation setting to 2, 3, 3. Okay, so you box this in, that's binary. Okay, now you have to add the clocking 24, 48, 72, 144, right? So travel lines of seconds, minutes, and hours. Seconds, minutes, and hours of 2, 3, 3. Sets position of travel calculation line interference. Let's say it travels in position locations and line settings, and let's say in calculation line interference at 24, okay, thousands. 24,000 sets lines of high center interference in seconds, minutes, and hours and track locations into positive and negative and positional levels of its image and set location, right? So that's 12,000 signature streams of positive and 12,000 signature streams of negative. The set position of travel calculation line directions has to go in the same direct signals and set location, right? It can't go to the opposite line screen because it offlines its communication, right? So it's understanding in position that you're going to 24,000 lines of frames per second, per minute, per hour. That puts position your perception settings and calculation of your system into your transistors and resistors that override calculation setting to its image, its applications. So it's important you understand that, right? And when you understand that set line connection high centers, the projector comes in line connections in all calculation modification. Comes back into you instructions through its setting. Okay. All right. It's very complicated, I know, guys. But I just want you to really understand how you can get in position locations to understand how to read a book now through zeros and ones, and how you can read a book from zeros and ones and retract in positions back into its frequency of its word. So it's direct and redirect, right? So you're going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And the faster you go, the more you stay in rhythm, the more you stay in program, the more you stay in your binary, in your compute system like calculation system. Okay? So the computation, the screen lines and adaptation line surface is really understanding enabled, understanding calculation lines embedded, set location of copy, and paste. Okay? Restart locations of defaults. Okay? Set location of delete. Okay? Erase and cancel. Okay? It's all direct signal locations. So you have to really understand what's going on and the zero correlate setting attractions, right? Sets position line settings, high calculation lines, on switch. Sets lines calculation line E line is off switch. Sets calculation lines of E line is off switch. Set lines communication lines of C line is on switch. Sets communication lines of perception line calculation line interference of provocation line is off switch. Sets communication line interference of E line calculation is on switch. Sets communication line interference or high line interference of division line communication setting and provocation high interference delete line center is off switch. Delete is not on switch, it's an off switch, which is your resistor. So I want you to break it down what a transistor is to a resistor, what a binary is to a setting, okay, through a singularity to a pattern. Okay, when you're creating patterns, you're creating block centers, okay, as that location, right? All through pixelation. So 0, 1, 0, 0, okay? Now, in the pixelation, what does that turn in line conditions of? Hologram. Okay? So I'm just showing you exactly through letters of communication stream how it comes in the line settings, how you come to some line interference in travel calculation of point centers. Okay? How to use yourself in track locations. This is all levels of remembering cycle, how your alphabetical string line calculation setting has to really revise line communication and program location settings when you come into all settings and communication through transistors and resistors. How to turn it on switch and how to turn it off switch through its computer and its memory. I've got to get you guys to understand, which is all calculation. What it does, it just runs its program, nothing else. And it's a continuous flow. The faster it goes, the more it stays in its modem, the more it stays in its unit. Okay? So in that calculation line setting in all travel, it comes into its user to its interception to its inception of its interface, its applications, right? How you see it through embedded, okay? How you see it in all formation through its settings and travel, okay? So it's important you understand what that all means to you inside connections, right? To understand how to use your computer is a totally different observation to its perception, how it's done through from an on switch and an off switch in set locations, the singularities to a pattern, okay? All right, all through set location, okay? So singularity, yeah, I sent you guys a very powerful video on TikTok communications. Singularity is basically one box frame that just basically goes this way, okay? Now add a correlation setting, let's say in position at 0. That's 0, right? So you turn it on, that's a 1, okay? You turn it off, okay, in set locations, now it's 2, all right? So if you add equal lines of another pattern, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's 8 patterns in set locations of overdrive, okay, in set locations to its compute system in traffic calculations. Okay, that's 8 patterns. Okay, so now you can do that, set lines at calculation to its position of program lines, but in position of a computer frame to its computer memory, it's always going through a 24, 48, 72, 144. A computer goes through its clocking, through seconds, minutes, and hours, through its transistors, and how many times it turns it on, and how many times it turns it off. Turns it on, turns it off, turns it on, turns it off. So it's kind of like going up the stairs, down the stairs, up the stairs, down the stairs, up the stairs, down the stairs, all right? That's what it is. So transistor is on, resistor is off in set location, okay? Try them too fast, line screen. So that's basically how you have to look at your computer memory of yourself, right? Understand that through all formations, right? Especially when you guys are getting to calculations of reading a book. So when you're going up the stairs, okay, you're getting into rhythm, okay? So correlation high interference, 0, sets on, sets off, sets on, sets off. See the arrow indication? Sets on, sets off. Okay? That's how it's in direction, right? Center communication line centers puts the lines at 0, sets position location calculates line interference into 1, sets position location line center line interference location of 2, sets position location line centers of 3. There you go, calculations. That's how you go up through the graph calculation string lines. How a computer comes into its memory line calculations. So it's an on switch, off switch, but in between is the actual number that sets position of tractions through behavioral calculation stream. 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so 0 correlating high interference beta, sets lines high center interference line calculating setting, calculate high interference alpha, sets location line settings high position location of delta, sets communication lines of theta, sets lines of omega, sets location of radiation. Okay? You understand? These are the frequencies that you're using through your graphing screens of your transistors and resistors and set location, all through traction. See? Stairs of recognition. All right? Okay. Now you understand that. Now you understand why one atom goes one way and one atom goes the other way. Ooh. Transistor goes on, resistors goes on, which means it's the opposite direction. So when they come together, what do they create? What do they create in set locations? Numbers. Okay, very powerful. On, off. You start here with 0. On is 1. 2 is off. 3 is on. Oh, going back to 1. Okay, so you get in position of 1, 2, 3, and 1. There's the wave, all right? Which is the charter, which is a graph, which is a screen, which is your Schumann resonance. Okay? Now you understand the importance. So you're working with line settings of 0, position of 1, in position of 2, in position of 3, and position of 1. Okay? So that is your binary right there in set lines equals lines of high center interference of identity and set location. Hooah! 0, 1, 2, 3. Boom! Okay? That's how it creates a graph. Okay? And this is all through its computer memory. Okay? All right. So, work with the stairs. See how the arrows are indicating? Say going up, going down, going up, going down, going up, going down, right? What does it create? 0, 1, 2, 3. Oh, because it has a rhythm. Okay, it has a flow. It knows what it's doing. It's running its program. So when you have 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, in set locations, the faster you go, the more you come to correlations of balance. If you go into 0 to 12, you're good to go. So you know how to count forward. You should be able to know how to count backwards. But you're not counting backwards, are you? You think you're counting backwards. You're directing and redirecting your binary retraction. You're shifting your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols in another formations so you can walk or talk or move or throw in your reality in line condition pixelations to your holographic setting. Okay? So, I know there's a lot of confusion going on, but that's really how you have to see yourself now when you're reading things, when you're seeing things, when you're touching things, when you're in that position to its location, when you actually see something. See, if you're seeing a track communication lines of dimension line screen, quarter set line calculation of positional line centers, setting track location, setting line division, setting off calculations into all position and line settings into application, right? Which is the wall, the center calculation of the wall, right? So what is we in the center line? Flux capacitor right away, boom. That's what you see right away, right? All right, communicate line screen. Oh, exactly. So it's a triangulation screen, right? Sets location line settings, which is what? Mother Earth. Sets lines of track lines to highest interference in position. Whoa, look at that. So once you understand that, the 3 track line centers is 0 ground, comes in position to its calculation stream interference into ground line condition setting to your gravities, right? All through the ground lines. Center lines its communication line settings into 1, 2, 3 track locations. Sending positional cross lines 1, 2, 3, 4 track locations, right? Setting line setting high line interference and traffic communication setting high positional calculations. Me standing here in line connections, sitting on the chair. And set tractions, all through calculation. Okay, very powerful stuff, isn't it? Try to understand how this all works, right? How you look at things and see things through perception, right? So the track lines calculation high interference, set position of 0 lines, sets position location of 0 lines, it sets position location of 0, 3 0 locations. Sets an indicated line interference high calculation of position programs. Sets calculation of the. Okay. There we go. Boom. Okay. And that's all 3 track lines at 3 zeros. So I had another 3 0 line connection settings. What is that in tractions of? 6, right? It's allocations. So this here is the actual binary of the wall, right? But it can be higher line connections to another line communications of another wall and set position locations to another wall, okay? Or set locations to another wall and set location, okay? So there's a lot of things you guys don't understand how this all works. These graph calculation line centers of 0, 1, 2, 3, 1. How it comes into a actual graph of the Schumann resonance. That's that location, right? All through the grounds. Okay, all through the grounds. Okay, all through the waves. See the waves coming in? See? All through the ground settings. Size graph activity, line position location, line system, seismology, line screen, height interference, center correlation, setting and balance in your flywheel and track location. Sets provision in your oracles and torical fields and set location. And you are always in the center of all operation. That's what you guys don't understand. You're always in the operation of the center. Hooah. Okay. You are in the center, which is the existence all at once. So the only thing that moves in track location is the mind. The mind shifts its reality, right? When it shifts its reality, your body becomes all levels of consciousness of space and time through its provision, through its mainframe, box frames, or anything through calculations, through its interception of its interface. Okay. So obviously there's a lot to be said, to be understood. How to see all communications from zeros and ones. Okay. The reason why I say non-binary, because you guys have to let go what doesn't exist, which is your alignment and how you see. Okay. Now, how you see is how you see through a binary. And understanding that through a binary is retraction of its binary. Then you understand how to use the binary of retraction of direct and redirect of zeros and ones, how they can move over and over again and again in different position of placements and settings. So you can understand how you move in a frame position of your computer game. Okay? Powerful stuff, isn't it? But that's what you guys got to form is a traffic flow. You got to understand how to use the correlation setting attractions. You have to learn how to use the position, center, and high interference, because the set lines of communication is the non-binary, right? That the non-binary is the lines that doesn't exist, but you want it to exist. If you formulate through non-binary, you're never going to see past lines of zeros and ones, or anything through pixelation, or anything through its hologram of its image, guys. Okay, that's why you have a foundation of 12. That's why you have a foundation of 114. Okay, you start with the 12, right? And then you start with the 12 to 114, right? And your provision scales lines its balance communication settings when you come into 111, 112, 113, 114, summer, spring, winter, fall. You got to understand how to use that through its mainframe of its box frame. This is a mainframe. Okay, so if you take a picture of me, click, there's 2 box frames up here, right? So that means I travel all at once in all existence lines of 3 box centers of mainframe position locations of inlines and outlines of space and track location that puts position line centers into binary recortex high calculation settings of decoord line interference and discord. Setting travel and communication setting and timeline sequence and particle acceleration line screening high interference and position location of programs. It's allocations, right? First, you find yourself in the center because you don't move. I'm not moving. My mind's moving. It's shifting wherever it's going. So wherever it's going through time. Heart, wherever it's going through time, it's going through the soul. Wherever it's going through the soul, it's going through the body. Mind, heart, soul, body. Okay? Always has to be in the center line centers of all lines of all center position and center calculation. Because that doesn't move. I don't move. Okay? My mind moves. It shifts. And when it shifts, everything else shifts. Okay? Your heart shifts to its time in between. Your soul goes through light, through travel. Your soul, you travel through light of everything that you see. And the body has to be in that frequency of consciousness, of its God. Okay? The sim, okay, is controlling the outline, which is what? The simulator. Okay? Everything is the input that comes everything of the output that connects everything to the audio. Okay? So that's what your transistors and resistors are. In all settings, has input, has output, and has audio. How to use the transmitters is understanding how to use the transistors in set location. This puts you in all levels of capacity over pi. Okay? It's important you understand how to use that in traction. Okay? Because that's what you're working with every single time. Transmitting, receiving, transmitting, receiving, transmitting, receiving, transmitting, receiving, transmitting, receiving. That's it, nothing else. But what are you transmitting and what are you receiving is the question. All right? So once you understand the question, there's no question. It's a infinity 8 out through equation, right? So there's a central line communication that has a gapping center. That gapping center is the space line screen that sets position your karma cycles, the retract location lines of provision. The transistors and the resistors has to be balanced every single time you go through seconds, minutes, and hours. And it's important too, because what you have to understand is you have to balance out the equilibrium of your flywheel, which is extremely important because that's the infinity 8 that rotates the system in traction, especially when you are in position of the grounds. But it's a holographic ground. It's not even a ground. It's a graph. It's a crop circle. Okay? So you have a box frame and you have a main frame. The main frame is you. The box frame is what you put yourself in, right? So if you understand that, then you understand how to go through light through travel. You start to see the light. See, this is light. I'm traveling through light. See, my finger's traveling through light. But where's it going? Where is my finger going? Well, that all depends on where I want through my intent. Where do I want that light to go? Its position locations, my transistors. Right? Disappears. Because it passes 24, 48, 72, 144. Boom! Disappear. Now that's the basic grounds. We started off in that line connection is the foundation graph line says 144 frequency. Right? But we're moving above that now. So getting out of the subterranean line interference, you have to drink more water now because you're going to be surfacing faster. The subterranean line screen interference in your water containment screens and high calculation in its position of its program is going to come into binary retraction in your set locations. You don't want to have your zeros and ones floating all around, don't know where they are in chronological order. Center correlate line interference of 0 1 line center is not in position of travel. It's in a glitch. Center correlation attractions and high traction. Look at this. All right, so in symbolism line screens, the binary cortex line screen has to be in position, location, operation of balance. And this is where you don't want to get any emotional line connections. So we got a zero correlation. It's going to attract line connections. Down and to the left. Okay? All right, so we start with through line communication 0, 1, 0, right? So in the track line calculation line interference, let's say the calculation of 0 line does a standard calculation line system, sets position location over here. Right? Off calculation line affects your grounds right away. Oops. So what's that also going to affect? Your position of your Merkaba travel. You got to retract, restates, revise, put yourself back in track lines to high setting. Back in traction, right? You're always going to be in a 45 until you understand the 45 track lines gets out of line communication structure, out of lines communication of its image location setting. Then you're free in positional calculation lines of travel communication its operation. Okay? So it's all about understanding your center line communications. You don't have anything through cluster. You have zeros and ones and 0. Let's go location sending attractions here. Okay? This is a binary. Okay? All right, so understanding that is all through graph calculations. So let's say this one here decides to do this. It's going to affect this. It's going to affect this. All the zeros. It's going to affect the 1, the 0. Oh, we got a cluster. Oh no, what's going on here? What is happening here? Oops. Red alert, red alert. Right? Cluster. So everything has to be in a traffic flow. It's like working in a factory where you have all different lines. Somebody works here, somebody works here, somebody works here, somebody works here. You are a machine. You're an operation machine. You are an engine. So what you're doing is you're trying to stay in that continuous flow. Okay? Try to stay in that continuous flow. All right? Got to stay in that continuous flow. Okay? So the zeros and ones can go back in traction. All right? So if you change your behavioral line connections, it changes everything in your graph calculation, transistors, and resistors. Set locations on, set locations on, set locations on. All right. So this is 1, this is 0, this is -0. Oops. You want an on switch. You want to go up. You don't want to go this way or that way. Especially if you get a negative in it. Then you're in overdraft. Uh-oh, -5. That's not good. You got to go back to 0. All right. Ooh-ah. Okay? So don't provision your cycles in track location and confusion. Okay? This is not directing and redirecting. This is going back in time and travel. Going back in time. That changes your past, that changes your presence, and changes your future. Ooh-ah. So let's not do that, shall we? In provision line cycles. You look real close, look at that. There's intelligence of the face. Woo-wee. Provision lines, here's the outline center. See? Boom. Use the 5 lines of the high position of the chin, nose, the communication line screen settings. Everything's information of intelligence. without even thinking. You're always in face of everything that you do in travel. Mining through lines of travel and recognition time sequence. In position locations, how you use yourself in set locations. All through traction. Okay? All right, so don't go into this. Because if you do that, this, and this doesn't work. Oh, overlap positions, you can't get in pixelation because you crossed over. So in position of binary, it's got to come into this. That's binary. This is an overlap of a binary that you do not want to do because it creates its own cube, which is its own intelligence of its own frame. That overrides the lines on 2 lines of singularity and 4 lines of singularity. You don't want to do that because if it creates its own cube, what is it creating? Its own level of consciousness of its intelligence. Okay? So don't do that. Okay? So really understanding what you're doing with your zeros and ones. Because you can set a line connection of levels into a cluster or a combination or a line connection of track settings. Or you got files in different folders. My God, I don't even know what folder I'm using anymore. Right? You have to go through all the files. All the images are mixed matched. You don't want to do that set line connection. There is an anagram interference right there in traction. Right? Psychological reset position of programs. All calculate and modify. Line connection types of locations. All line connections. What am I doing with my hand? Going this way, 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 going this way. That's how your computer works. Ooh. So when you go faster and faster, what are you creating? You're going to higher levels of your platforms. You're going up the stairs. Having fun. You're not going or this is fine. It's monotone. It's B-line sending high interference. But in provision, it's glitching. So what are you going to do? Retract, reframe, reposition. Continue on, right? So it's all line connections mined through travel, right? In all calculations, you don't want to have an alpha line and have position location to a beta. No. Okay. You start with 0, then you're at 5, and then you're at -0. Uh-oh. That's not good. So the center correlation of 0, 5, 0 is not in a box frame. It's not in a binary. Right? So that provisions lines of cycles in reverse position in time. So the actual binary itself goes backwards in set locations. Not a good idea. You got your files back in line, sequence, line connection, travel settings. Don't want to do that. There's set location. Oops. You want to go forward. You want to go forward. Forward, 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 forward. Always forward, forward, forward. Never back, 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 back. Okay? All right. So these are the things that you have to understand how this all works through your computer memories, right? Really understand that through your transistors, your resistors, your non-binary, your binary, and your retractions to your binary system, which puts everything to volume, which puts everything to vast, which puts everything to velocity, and all set locations to button tractions. Your computer system of balance. Okay? All right. Coming in that setting sign interference in your track location setting to all position locations. Okay? This is what you really have to understand. The balance correlation in your higher self is the transition resistors. The calculation modification to your avatar is the binary settings. Now, the position location to your sim is your computer. That's how you got to come into your relation and see yourself. Just running a program and nothing else. A continuous flow that keeps going and going and going and going and going because it never stops. It never, ever, 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 ever stops. But it has to go this way and it has to go the opposite way. See, the faster you go and the more you stay in rhythm, what you are doing is you're creating an image. Now that could be a letter, number, shape, or symbol. But you have to understand what your computer is doing through its transistors and its resistors to its binary. Okay, to understand that through its capacity puts everything in volume of mass. Okay, how many zero line communication I'm going to use today? General and visible calculation setting 24 million lines, zero line in position, one track lines, the balance position, location, opera location, setting, location, alpha, delta, theta, communication lines, omega, less than like conditions, z, location lines of radiation. So you can use whatever you want, but you've got to stay in balance with your system more than ever now, because you come to in your line screens and high interference, and the way you start seeing things is going to change the permission locations to your settings of zeros and ones if you don't get them in position all calculations mainframe of its box frame. Okay, so that's about understanding how you see yourself in resolution, how you see yourself in correlation, how you see yourself in light or anything that attractions. Right? It's keeping the balance inside of you that balances everything outside. Let me say that again. If I keep myself balanced and inside, everything outside is balanced from inside. Yes, inside is outside, outside is inside, but inside is the actual outside, and the outside is the inside. So it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're doing it from all levels of inside of you. So it doesn't matter if you say this is outside because you know it's inside. So you really can't lie to yourself anymore. You're honestly being all levels of with you and all outside locations. So you understand all levels of me and inside, which is everything outside. And outside is inside is outside. Okay? So that's the rhythm you all have to come into. Right? To understand how to go through right over left and left over right and create a hologram. Okay, so if you understand that, then you understand your binary, how it works inside locations of transition resistors. Right? Because what is it doing through traction? What is it doing through traction? It's creating its image, its evocation of its graph, right? So, once you get into that setting, everything becomes an information location of screen into balance, okay? All right, I'll see you guys in 5. Adios.